Alright, 1.4 lecture uses and misuses of statistics. Really, I want you to read the 1.4 stuff on this. There's a lot of little nuance to go into, and I'll answer questions in comments. But what I want to quote at you is lies, damn lies, and statistics. Mark Twain may not be the originator of this, but you can look up the Wikipedia article to find out whom you want to give credit to on this one. Alright. All business, all politicians, all scientists will lie to you and use statistics to give weight and credence to whatever outcome they want to have. Right? One of the reasons we take this class is that we can have a better, deeper understanding of statistics so that we can cut through the minutiae and see what is true and what is false. And being able to recognize how they manipulated the data, or how they misrepresented the data, or how they did something somewhere along the lines to push their agenda is very important. Never trust anybody's statistics until you look at them and agree with it. Now, when you look on pages 21 through 23, there's all sorts of different things. There's outright lying about data, where you're just making up the numbers. Freud gets blamed for this one a lot. Other things that can goof it up are when you throw out outliers, which is a very valid thing to do. Occasionally there's just things which are so outlandish, there's so much the exception to the rule, you throw out that data. And sometimes scientists might throw out extra stuff. One of them, which is unintentional, is if you're doing a long-term study, you have to throw out all the data points of people who died during the study, assuming that you weren't interested in how soon the deaths happened. But if you're looking at some sort of medication for hair growth and people die during the study, you can't measure the hair growth of the person after they're deceased. Other things which are real common are just misrepresenting the data when you're making a picture of it. We'll get into it in more detail when we start looking at graphs, but if you make a bar graph and you make it with a thin, itty-bitty line versus a big, thick line, it has more weight and more credence because it's bigger. Similarly, if you get fancy with your graphs and you make them three-dimensional, think of little buildings next to each other, you're making it look bigger, and so you can misrepresent data by just making the picture pretty. Other things you can do is you can zoom in on just the top part of bar graphs. Again, we'll look at that one in particular when we do our graphing. And when you're zoomed in, you can see a difference of 1% a lot, but if you're zoomed out, it may not look very different. So if I draw two pictures of the same data, and here's two thin lines versus two thick lines, you see how the picture I made with the thick lines seems more imposing, and that's because it takes up more space. Now, if I make them three-dimensional figures versus flat figures, that difference becomes even greater because, again, it's taking up more space. It has more weight in our minds. So we can lie just on how we make the pictures, and it may be unintentional. Colors have a big effect. Red grabs our attentions, right? Blue, not so much. Green, definitely not. Remember, we evolved from monkeys, and seeing the ripe fruit in a tree is important to us. Sorry, colorblind people, but it's true. Other things that happen are just you make bad assumptions. One of my favorites is when you look at cities and you count the number of bars versus the number of churches. If you have more bars in a city, guess what you also tend to have? A lot more churches. Does this mean that bars create churches? No. There's an underlying, lurking, or confounding variable, right, which is the population of the city. When you have more people, you naturally have more bars or more churches. Alright, so in statistics, you have to be cautious and you have to know what's going on. And for each industry, you have to get used to the ways in which people make assumptions to test its credence or its validity. Again, lies, damn lies, and statistics.